Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first FPL video of the 2021-2022 FPL season. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the video, I have finally succumbed to the peer pressure of that one subscriber in my comments asking me probably once to do a face reveal. So, here it is, guys. There's my face. Not that exciting. Anyway, let's just get straight into the video. Harry Kane, the cornerstone of any successful FPL team in the previous season, has seen a price increase from starting from 10.5 last season to 12.5 million this season. Now, that is very expensive, and I'm going to pose the statement through to you guys that that is not worth it. Okay, so how do we actually evaluate if that is worth it or not? Well, first of all, we have to look at the parameters that we're playing with. In FPL, you start off with a budget of 100 million, okay? But what we actually need to realize is that is different from the budget of the players that are playing on your pitch. The budget of the players playing on your pitch is closer to 81 million when you take into account the 3 defenders and the 1 goalkeeper that you will have sitting on your bench. So the active budget that you have is 81 million or somewhere around there. Okay, so now we know how big of a percentage Kane takes up in your team. Now we need to move on to a more philosophical question. What are our goals for this season? And that will vary from person to person. But for most people, it will be to try get the highest overall rank that you possibly can. Now, for me, last season, my goal was to achieve 65 points per average, which I did achieve, and that allowed me to reach the top 10k in the world, which was phenomenal. And I feel like for a lot of you guys watching, your goals will be fairly similar. Now, knowing these two things, we can determine that if Kane is 15.4% of our budget and we're trying to achieve an average of 65 points per game week, we can then make the conclusion that Kane needs to bring in 10 points per game to make it worth it. Now that is highly unachievable in normal situations, but one thing that we have to account for is that we have the captaincy chip, which doubles the amount of points that a player gets in a game week. So if Kane gets 6 points in a game week and he is our captain, he will then end up on 12 points, which means that he is over that 10 points per game average. In comparison, if we look at Salah and Fernandes, which are the great FPL premium options for the midfield, we can see that they have great fixtures to target for captaincy, and even better yet, there is some super synergy with the rotation of captaincy of these two players. So when you're looking at building a team, bringing in these two premium options just seems like a much better line to take than going for a Salah and Kane or a Fernandes and Kane. Now I know there are a few of you out there that would be screaming into your screen saying, what if Kane goes to City? Surely that would bump up his average, surely he would be involved in more goals. And yes, that might be true, but in the same breath, it might not be true. Because if we take a look at the City team, there are a lot more goal-scoring players in that team as opposed to Tottenham, whose play really centered around Son and Kane linking up together to score the goals and in turn get the points in FPL. For City, we have players like KDB, Foden, Mahrez, Sterling, Gundogan. You know, there are a whole host of players that can really advance up the pitch and score those goals. And in the same breath, we have to consider the bonus point system, which offered Kane so many points last season. I mean, he was just absolutely lapping up the bonus points for Tottenham. Now, if he moves to a team like City, will he really be in contention for as many bonus points as he did achieve in the last seasons? I tend to think not. Now, having said all of this, it is not going to be the case where you won't have Kane at any point through your season. I think there are some times where we will need to bring in Kane, where he will have great captaincy fixtures, you know, fixtures that we can target fixtures where we expect him to get, 8, 9, 10 points, above 10 points. And when you put that captaincy on him, becomes a super valuable option in your team. I just think for now, Kane is not the option to go for. I would much rather go for the two premiums in the midfield in Salah and Fernandes. FPL is a game, and one thing that you have to realize about a game is you have to break it down to truly understand what you're playing for. And with FPL, there is a value side and there's a tempo side. And with the value side, you want to bring in players that will rise in value through good performances, attracting the investment of different managers throughout the league. And then we have the tempo side, where we want to target players with good fixtures, because that's when their points potential will be the highest, and that's when they will bring in the most points for your team. I just don't see Kane fitting into either side of that argument right now. But throughout the season, when your value rises and you're able to bring in more expensive players, then maybe there's a spot or an argument for Kane. Anyway guys, that has been all for this video. If you have enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the tribe. It really does mean a lot to me, and I really want to increase the amount of content that I release this FPL season. That is all for me guys, and join us next week when we use chemistry to determine why Bruno Fernandes gets so many penalties. Cheers. So in order for him to get 10 points per game, without the captaincy, it's impossible. That would mean that a player would have to... So, what we can take away from this, looking at the fixtures, is that we wouldn't really captain Kane, and to expect Kane to get 10 points per game on average is very unachievable. That would mean... Now, looking at this and looking at the fixtures and seeing that Kane isn't really an option for captaincy in the first couple game weeks of our FPL season, we would have to expect Kane to get 10 points per game